Fine. Good afternoon. Welcome to the SOA session. Since last unit is having 11 hours to spend as per analysis syllabus, we are streaming as per the curriculum. So till now in fifth unit, what we have come across is completely based upon software engineering part of service-oriented architecture, especially. Already SOA is a software design technique. So in this especially in this that we are completely rely upon service oriented analysis, service oriented design. That's the major case that we are looking for here. Apart from that, how this analysis and design can be simulated, that can be done through my service oriented modeling. So I have shown you a service oriented modeling framework. What are all the notations that they have used? What are all the corresponding tools to be used? Okay, from IBM that we have SOMF, W3C have recognized this SOA-ML. So already I have shown you in the last session, right? So using a drag and drop tools or using an XML based markup language, that it will help for us to model the environment, right? So these are all the things that we have seen till now: service oriented analysis, design, modeling. So next stage that what we have to see, business process design. Already we have seen this topic as a one or two slides orientation, right? But now we are going to see in depth business process design, right? So in the previous syllabus, now your current subject code is IT 8074. In the previous syllabus, IT 6801, they have given this topic as WSBPEL, WSBPMN. So these things that they have given, but here they have changed the title. That's all. But one more thing, business process design tools are available in large fashion depending upon the field of engineering, right? If I want to do it in a mathematical way, I am having some tools. Example, I am having process chart, quality control chart, right? Gantt chart, some of the things that you have come across in your related to your software project management paper. So in that you could able to come across those types of papers, as well as for example, if I'm going to do it for some job scheduling algorithm means, so in that, so how many processors are there, how many jobs are coming, so how I am going to create the design for this aspect. For every situation the design will vary, so how to change the situation, how to change the design dynamically, right? So for all those things, these the other types of tools will help us, right? But here we are going to see the tool that which is going to encompass with my web service and it is going to work with, right? So that's what we are going to see in today's session. So what is BPEL, right? So that's what the major case, business process, that could be the term that we want to underline here, right? Business process execution language. So how I am going to do that? So here the role of hardware and software will be represented very clearly, right? So ultimately, how the services or how the data is flowing through services, that is also must be, that's also must be a very big matter here, right? So here the components, how they are doing. See that this is the sample, simple as well as sample diagram that what they have given, right? There is a billing service, there is a sales DB, right? How they are communicating? They are communicating through that. That you could able to see that mail cover. What is that mail cover actually? That's nothing but your SOAP request and response, right? Remember that it's a cover. So how they are communicating, right? How their communication need to happen, that must be determined through the router what they have given. So everything they are ready to represent, right? If any situations are going to come, how they are going to manage, that will be represented in terms of my fault handling, that we will see, right? I think we might have seen some of the chapters of 4, right? While you are going to deal with the WS transactions and especially WS addressing and WS reliable messaging. We have come across these things. Please remember. What would be the perspective of this BPEL? How I have to do, right? Using your SOA layers, here they have given you the clarity, right? So my notation will be based upon either BPMN or UML, right? But already we have derived from UML, so no need to talk about the UML. But the service-oriented modeling environment will accept the UML notations also, right? Because I think in the last class we have seen about transaction diagram. So in the transaction diagram that I have incorporated sequence diagram in it, right? But instead of keeping the normal process box, what I have replaced with the actors or use cases involved in the respective scenario has been replaced with the notations of SOMF, right? That is what we have shown, right? So especially the role of business analyst that is being mentored through the activity, right? Remember that we have mentioned zones for individual activities in the transaction diagram. Second thing, how about this uh, the role of programming languages are ruling here, right? So for every activity, you have the set of instance is being generated. That's the major case. That instance will be monitored by the server that what we are having physically, right? Those things will be available in my existing systems, right? So what would be the role of a service developer here? See, till now we have the role called commonly developer. Now they bifurcated that application developer, integration developer, service developer, right? So services, how my service has to connect with my native service, how my service has to connect with a heterogeneous service, right? How my service has to connect with a service which was not completely unfit for the environment, right? For all those things, what could be the technology that I have to follow? All that interfaces must be written properly and must be linked, right? So it could be like a port where I could be able to communicate all types of connections. That's the thing that the service developer need to ensure, because he had developed a very good and wonderful service mostly used by common man. In that case, how it will be visible to the outside world, right, without having the proper interface. So proper interface is mandatory here. So that is a major thing that service developers will look into that. So what are the technologies that they will be following in the business services, that you could able to see that. So the existing systems are being maintained as the notations that they have given in terms of both software as well as hardware, right? So this could be the representation, right? Physically, these things are visible. That's what available as the existing system. How it will be logically visible to the user or the developer, right? That can be represented through the notation layer. That's what the thing top-down perspective, right? They want to convey about this, right? So what about the existing solutions that we have? Traditional architecture, what we will follow, right? Traditional architecture for every infrastructure, that means for every tier of communication, we will create everything separately, right? That could be the case. But when we are going for the method that what we are going to, how to arrange these services, that's what orchestration. So how we are going to follow that. So that could be a very cost effective fashion. That's the major thing, because arranging components, arranging services, communicating between services and components, communication between the services and outside world. So all those things will be a tough job. So that's what they are ready to convey about these two processes, right? So either we are going to follow tier based architecture or orchestration based. So this could be the existing solutions being projected by the development environment. For the purpose only, SOA has been introduced here, right? See, directly we could not able to see that BPEL. That's the reason why we are coming for this corresponding notation. That's what being explained here, right? So already I have conveyed you, right, how these services will be communicated to the outside world. That's in terms of using my gateway, right? How these gateways are being linked. These topics already we have seen in our fourth unit. WS security will help me, right? WS addressing will help me. WS reliable messaging will help me. Okay, so we have that stack web service stack will be available there, right, for all these features. So those stacks will be configured when service is going to communicate with the outside world, or service is going to communicate with the other service. So that could be the major case that they are planning to incorporate. And one more thing, why I have to rely on a third party interface? Why don't we have our own interface? That is the case that made the people to design these WS standards. Everything starting from WS addressing, WS reliable messaging, WS transaction. Okay, so the entire stack has been designed over there. So that could be the ultimate alternative apart from my regular interfaces between my application and the end user. That's what the people are ready to convey here. See here, the first alternative that what we can take it forward. So ultimately BPEL that we can take it forward, because the first one, build your own one-off orchestration. That could be a cumbersome job, right? Because assume that Google Suite is having these many number of services, right? How will you communicate between all those services interconnectively? Can you able to communicate from a form without a interface with a corresponding one more product of my Gmail, one more product of my Google account? No, it's not possible. They are having the arrangements to communicate between form with the Excel, linking the form with the corresponding mail service. Do they have the form linking with the corresponding the Meet chat? No, they don't have. If I'm going to click, it will open in other window in their native platform only. It will not open as it is, right? So likewise, orchestration for one particular environment could be a tough and cumbersome job. Traditional approach, tier-based approaches are not useful in those cases, right? So that's the reason why the alternative modeling that what we are going over here is it is ready to represent my data in terms of XML, right? That's what the term rich metadata, as well as one of the major factor WSDL is entering here. It is ready to bind with me with any network, because based upon the property of XML interoperability or platform independency, it is ready to bind with any framework. That could be the major case. Since WSDL is lightweight, internet scale connectivity won't be any issues, right? As well as it is ready to communicate for synchronous as well as asynchronous. Remember in SOMF, we have mentioned the type of communication, synchronous and asynchronous, by using two different notations, right? As well as exception management also being available here. Nothing but that we are going to see fault handling here. Extensible and composable, right? Composable means already we have seen, right? Types of services, task based or entity based. How we are going to perform that. That is also being a major case that it can be included very easily. That means from the notation, I could able to come to a conclusion why either it is based upon user centric or task centric, that I could able to understand it in a easier way. That's what the term composable, right? So convergence of application environment and integration. Already I have shown you, right? So this BPEL that I could able to integrate with any type of development environment. I could able to integrate with IBM Eclipse as a plugin. I could able to integrate with the NetBeans IDE as a plugin. Likewise, for all the development environments, that it is having its own plugin to be incorporated. Even for .NET, it is having as a OCX, OLE control extension. It's available as the OCX, right? I could able to incorporate my BPMN with the .NET framework also. So that much effective this BPL alternative for my existing single orchestration as well as multiple tier based architectures that could be replaced with this. Fine. Why I have to use my BPL? So those things has been listed out in the previous section itself. So anyway, to highlight a point here is, if I'm going to include a new business process that can be included without affecting the existing system, that could be the major case. Because I think you have come across your component diagram in UML, right? So you will introduce a component, but once you introduce a component, what will happen? Ultimately, association happening between the components will be dismantled. So what you have to do? Again, you have to establish the connection. But in case of BPEL, it's not necessary. That will be identified and clubbed with the existing services without dismantling the associations. That is the major reason the usage of BPL is being still in the market. Right, orchestration. So how the process of orchestration is happening here? So they don't want to leave the orchestration here, right? So they want to incorporate it, but in a possible way, right? So it's like identifying the best things in the worst thing. So that's what the case that they are using here. So it is good to deploy it in the private business process, right? What is a private business process? So if I'm going to incorporate a payment gateway, that is a private business process that will not be visible for me. Updating my own inventory management, that is going to be my private business process, right? So likewise, for incorporating the private business process, I can go for these types of orchestration, right? So I could be able to incorporate in that cases, right? So that could be the continuous orientation here. But although, yeah, even though that it is being incorporated as a private business process from a central facility, that I could be able to monitor it. That could be the major case, right? If I want to change some arguments of the particular web services, I can change, right? I could be able to do alterations. If I want to block some specific parameter, that should not be displayed, right? It is telling some tedious values. Yes, I am ready to control it over through my orchestration pattern. So that has been represented in terms of a simple diagram, right? So the methods that whatever that they are using, invoke, receive, reply, right? So these are all the basic methods that could be employed, that when the coordinator is ready to communicate with it, different types of web services. Assume that here receive and reply will always based upon your SOAP only, right? So invoke is nothing but that we are ready to call the content. It is nothing but it is purely based upon your RESTful web service, right? How I will invoke a service in terms of a URL, right? So that's what the term they are ready to talk about that. So choreography is nothing but self-management, right? Or peer management. There is no need of central coordinator. That is the case that where we will be moving for choreography. That is the main difference between orchestration and choreography. Already we have seen this, right? During our third unit closing. So anyway, the reason to study orchestration and choreography is while we are going to create the modeling for our environment using BPEL and BPMN, in that case, for this application, whether I have to choose choreography or orchestration or hybrid, that I have to decide depending upon the application what I am going to choose. So that is the case that here we are talking about. So that you could able to see here, peer-to-peer management. There is no central coordination here, how they are communicating. But when we are coming for my orchestration, you could be able to see that there will be a central coordinator managing the communications. Via them only that you could be able to communicate. But here it won't be like that. That could be happening depending upon my, like I think you could be able to remember your token ring network, right? So likewise, that whom they want to communicate, that they will be identified by the respective token. That's what the term choreography will help us, right? So they are talking about difference between orchestration and choreography. That could be the case that already we discussed very in detail in previous section, but pertaining to current case, that what I have to use, right? So I have to talk about this. BPL supports two different ways. How I will describe my business process based upon my orchestration and choreography. So first one, I have to talk about my executable processes, right? So executable processes, what does it mean? If I supply a value, by default it will give me an answer. That's all. That is what I executable process. Abstract business protocols, what does it mean? What is the methodology to communicate with the corresponding web service, right? What is the methodology in turn that corresponding web service will talk with me? That's what my abstract business protocols, right? So business protocols will be completely handled by choreography engine or choreography pattern. So orchestration will handle the executable process. That's all. So if we are going for an SOA alternative in modeling environment or design environment, ultimately the role of orchestration choreography will be there. Orchestration will handle the executable processes. Choreography will handle the abstract business protocols. Remember that orchestration and choreography are the terms in theory only. When we are going into the actual environment, we have some other name to control it. For example, if I need to include this executable process management through orchestration, means in the environment of BPEL, there will be a tick mark. I have to select that. Once if I select the tick mark for the corresponding EP, Ultimately, my BPEL will take care of the process of orchestration. For choreography also, we will have that option ABBP. An option will be that if I'm going to click that, check that tick mark, automatically it will happen, right? So that could be the practical scenario that you have to come over with. How to build a business process, because ultimately this could be the time to learn about the business process design, right? So by taking a case study that we could able to track it forward, right? So what could be the, or who are all the web services participating in this? Either a single web service or multiple web services are going to be involved to design this work. That's what. Either we are going to do it parallelly or sequentially. That's what we have to convey. So what about the conditional behaviors, right? So depending upon the situation, the communication between the web services will change. That's what conditional behaviors. Finally, during communication, what about data exchange? Whether the data will be repeatedly circulating, or if any intermediate values are come, it need to be stored or not. So likewise, I have some situations to query over there, right? So if my transaction has been stopped in the middle, what I have to do? For that, what is the exception handling mechanism I have to take it forward? So these are all the things will be encountered here. So by combining everything that can be given through my UML diagrams in a easier way, right? But how we are going to represent it in the form of steps in the algorithmic way. So BPML and BPMN will help me for this, right? So what are all the steps that I have to do? So I have to convert. That means in algorithm we will use step-by-step procedure to solve the problem. Here, activity by activity step to design the process. That's here the term that what we have to use. We have to create an activity, right? So as well as it will have some primitive activity as well as structured activities also. So that's what we have seen. Primitive activities, right? So what are all the primitive activities that we will be using here? Or it is like primitive data types. What are all the primitive types that available here? Invoke, receive, reply, assign, throw, wait, terminate. There are 7 primitive activities are there, right? While you come for this throw, it is purely working with my exception handling. Wait and terminate will work with my multi-threading. Okay. Reply, receive, those things will work with my SOAP service request and response. Right. So invoke will work with my URL, RESTful web service. Okay. Assign will work with my normal way of recalling the value. That's what assign. Right. So these are all the primitive activities which are involved here, right? So if you want to design the business process, these must be specified, right? That's the major case. Combining primitives. So what is mean by combining primitives? So I think people who have worked with the UI path, you might know about that. They will create a sequence there. Sequence means the flow of activity happening from there. For example, I am going to take a for example, for service-oriented architecture, what are all the books available in Amazon? Or that what I will do, I will create a sequence in UiPath software, right? So the RPA software, that what I will create. First, I will give that location, URL, Amazon URL. Next activity, what I will do means, I will go and block the pages, right? Select the pages in the corresponding Amazon.in, right? Likewise, how many pages are there? I will give input into the control of the corresponding UiPath environment. Once if I have given the control, it will ask where I have to store the retrieved results. I have to create an Excel sheet and give the path of the Excel sheet towards the corresponding thing. What are all the things that I have to retrieve? So I have to give the ISBN number. That's the first field in my Excel. Next, author name. Next, book title. Next, what is the MRP price currently available in stock or not? So what are all the fields that need to be retrieved from the website scrapping, right? It will scrap and it will store in the Excel sheet. So I will create the set of activities, nothing but my sequence, right? So that could be the term sequence. So that sequence will come in a flow. That order can be given. If I'm going to get any decision making, in that cases, the flow can be redirected. That's what the thing regarding this complex primitives, especially structure activities will work with my control structures, right? Control structures, switch, while, right? Those things will work with that. Alternatively, switch for a switch case construct, you have an alternative called a pick. So that will help us. Apart from that, we are having if we are having any hyperlink that has been mentioned using partner link. When I'm going to use any variable, I have to use the tag variable, right? So these things are available for that. So how to define a process? How to define a process? So I'm going to use the port types. These are all will come in my WSDL program. I'll show you the programs also, right? So I have to tell the port type in which port type, what type of operation need to happen, that will be specified in the WSDL program, right? So how we are going to invoke the web service side. Here you could able to see them this BPL process, how they have designed this business process, right? For the term business travels, right? So understand that these are all drag and drop facilities will be available in your BPL software. Okay. What are all the services available here? First case, first question. Employee travel status web service, American Airlines web service, Delta Airlines web service. These are all the three web services are being listed here. Right. First we have listed the web services. Second case. Second thing. Client is the next component that has been given over there. When these two people are going to communicate, intermediately there is a service. That service is going to help us to communicate between the client and multiple types of services. Right? I think you could be able to simulate with makemytrip.com, right? But it is ready to retrieve you different types of flight services for a particular destination, right? So I could able to filter it through depending upon my budget, or depending upon my travel time, or depending upon my, I have most number of filters will be there, right? So the best offer will be retrieved based upon the filter that what I am going to pass. That's the major case, right? So how the flow will be? Flow is mentioned by the primitives. See that client request number one. Service will request employee travel web service. I will get a reply. Next, I am invoking the American Airlines web service. Again, in that it is ready to retrieve me the details also. Likewise, Delta Airlines web service. Parallelly, it is happening. In the same way, I could be able to compare. See, my employee status, travel status is being confirmed with these two airline services. So, which one could be the better, right? Whether it is a lesser or which is higher. So which one is going to be the best one? That will be given with the primitive assign. So remember that. Which is the best offer? They are comparing in terms of price only, right? They are comparing. They are not using any other filter. So once the best offer is going to be come over that will given us a reply, right? So remember that. What are the primitives here we have used here? Request, reply, invoke, assign. So these are all the four basic primitives that we have used. Along with that, we have used callback, right? Callback. So remember that primitive. It's a complex primitive. So callback that we have used. The callback reason why we have used is that we are ready to, in a service page, we are projecting two rates, two heterogeneous airline services. That's what callback. So for comparative strategy, I'm having those variables in my screen. So that's what the term that we are ready to communicate. And the one more thing, the same page it need to communicate, right? That's the reason why port type has been given as common for both of them, right? So that could be the major case that I want to discuss here. And the second thing that what we have to note down here is that see that the notations are being identified, right? So some of the notations are being derived from your UML only. See, by default, when you are going to work with your BPL software, these things will get to be derived by using. See, when you are going to use the type of primitive, the subsequent arrow marks will be generated on its own, right? So when you are going to take decisions based upon the particular filter, automatically it will happen, right? So you could be able to mention it, right? What you are mentioning within the corresponding symbol that will be represented in your range. That's the case. Next section is nothing but fault handling, nothing but that exception management. So how to handle the fault handling mechanism? That's what we are going to see here. Fault handling mechanism. So faults in BPL can be various sources, right? So it may throw an exception by default, or you can design your own what do you call user defined exception handling mechanism also available. Otherwise, WSL will generate its own fault message, right? So either you want to handle on your own or you leave it to BPL. So that could be the case that here we are people are talking about. Normally, a fault can be thrown automatically by the BPL runtime environment. In some cases or in some processes, if the consequence of error conditions in the runtime environment are not related to network communication or other reasons, BPL defines several standard faults, right? So if it could not able to come into this particular section, that it is ready to define some standard faults. See, that's what instead of running with the standard fault mechanism, best you can design your own faults. That's the easier way, right? Compared to thing. For example, you are communicating with the American Airlines service. American Airlines service is not responding properly. The service call is coming empty again, right? The response from the American Airlines is coming as empty. So how you will represent in the web page? How you will represent? So I could not be able to give some question mark or hash symbol or something thrown. So I could be able to give some proper message. Currently, the American Lines server are busy, or some sort of service that I have to generate from my side, right? It will not be generated by American Lines web service. It has to be generated from the web service, because my web service only collaborating all the web services in the single containment environment, right? So that's the reason why it is good to generate my own exception. That could be the idea that I want to post it here, right? So if you want to signal a fault, what is the syntax that I have to use? That's what they are given. Throw fault name equal to, within double quotes I am going to give the name, right? So throw activity I am using here for signaling the faults. So how to handle the fault? That's what they have given, right? That we have talked till now about this only. So how to handle the faults? Either we are going to do it by using standard fault mechanism or user defined fault mechanism. Instead of using the term exception management, here we are using the term fault management mechanism, right? So that's what they are ready to talk about here, handling faults. Okay. So here the another term that what we have to look out here is fault handler, right? Fault handler. What is this fault handler? If if I am going to use the existing fault handling primitives, no need to use fault handler. If I am going to use my user defined fault handling mechanisms, fault handler is mandatory, right? So that's what the term that they are ready to convey here. So fault handler. So in the BPMN or BPEL environment, when you are going to select this signaling and fault systems, that automatically it will ask you with the radio button, it will ask whether you want to choose standard faults or user defined faults. If you are going to give user defined faults, you have to mention the fault handler name. How you are going to fault handler is nothing but the code what it is going to handle the faults, right? So what is the file name you are going to give for the file name has been named as fault handler here. That will be mentioned and specified in this case, right? So that could be the idea of talking about fault handling. Okay, so that is the case. Next, scopes. Scopes are nothing but how the modularity of processes are there, as well as how my sequences is being driven, right? So that could be the thing that scope will determine, because the validity of the data also being determined by the scope only. But here for us, data management will be taken care of by XML, right? But activity and flow will be managed by my BPEL and the BPMN, right? So they will take care of it. That is the reason why they are talking about the scope here, right? So how you are going to create the scope for my fault handling, up to which notation that this fault handling mechanism need to scroll. So what you have to do, the simple thing is, while you are going to create the component, you will have the property as assigned to. In that, you have to choose the name of the fault handler. If you are going to choose the name of the fault handler, ultimately that component will support exception handling. The component supports fault handling mechanism, right? So that is the case that I want to retrieve here, right? So by that I will stop here. If you need any clarifications, you can post in the chat. Thank you.